The stylist arrived at 4 p.m. sharp. Her name was Si-hyun. Efficient, precise, the kind of woman who had dressed the wives of powerful men long enough to have strong opinions about all of them. She walked into the penthouse, looked at Amara once, and made a face she almost hid in time. Amara clocked it immediately. Si-hyun pulled out the pre-selected look. Safe, structured, forgettable, the kind of dress that said wife of important man without saying a single thing about the woman wearing it. Amara looked at it for 3 seconds. No, she said. Si-hyun blinked. Mr. Kwon's usual preference for events is, the stylist was saying. I'm not Mr. Kwon. Amara fired. She moved to the garment rail herself, fingers walking through fabric until she found it. Pushed to the very back. A deep emerald gown. Backless. Structured at the shoulder. She held it against herself in the mirror. This one, she said. That wasn't selected for this occasion, Si-hyun said. Si-hyun. She said it warmly, which somehow made it more final. This one. The argument about her hair lasted 11 minutes. Amara 1 in 10. Si-hyun, to her considerable credit, did extraordinary work once she accepted the brief, pinning, shaping, coaxing Amara's hair into something that was entirely itself and entirely intentional. By 7 p.m., Amara stood in front of the full-length mirror in Si-hyun's gray penthouse and thought, I look like a painting. The good kind. The kind that made gallery owners cry. She heard the front door at 7:15. She checked her earrings once, picked up the clutch and walked out of the bedroom. He was standing at the end of the hallway, looking at her. For full seconds passed. You changed the dress, he said. Si-hyun will recover. His eyes moved, once controlled the way he did everything, from her hair to the gown to her face. Something shifted in his expression. Not displeasure. Not coldness. Something he didn't name and she didn't push. You'll be photographed tonight, he said. Almost a warning. I know. She met his eyes. Good. The corner of his jaw moved. He offered his arm. She took it. 400 guests. 3 ballrooms. The kind of event where every handshake is a transaction and every smile has a price attached to it that nobody mentions out loud. Amara had never been in a room like this in her life. She walked in on Si-hyun's arm and felt 400 pairs of eyes recalibrate simultaneously. Who is she? Where is she from? Why does she look like that? Why does he look like he doesn't hate standing next to her? She squeezed his arm once, light, quick, the agreed signal. Follow my lead. He didn't pull away. And then she went to work. She moved through the room like she'd been doing this for years, reading people in seconds, adjusting her energy for each conversation. She remembered every name after hearing it once. She made his coldest board members laugh. She charmed his most difficult investor's wife in 4 minutes over canapes with a story about a Lagos market, and a dress that cost $15 and accidentally started a fashion trend. She held his hand the way people hold hands when they mean it. Not performative. Not stiff. Just present. He watched her work and felt something he didn't have a category for. They were 40 minutes in when the journalist found them. Entertainment reporter. Recorder out before she'd fully closed the distance. Questions arriving fast and practiced. How long have you been together? Where did you meet? What does your family think? Is it true? The announcement came right after Shin Yuri. Si-hyun went very still. Amara stepped forward. Not in front of him, just enough, and smiled. We met in a café, she said. Completely true. He was terrible at saying thank you. She looked up at Si-hyun, then added, but he's better now. The reporter laughed. The recorder kept running. Are you in love with him? The reporter asked. The room held its breath. Amara looked at Si-hyun. And for one moment, unscripted, unguarded, belonging to neither of them, he was looking back at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. She held it for exactly 1 second. Then she turned back to the reporter and smiled. We're working on it, she said lightly, and moved them both away before anyone could follow up. Si-hyun said nothing for 3 minutes. He didn't let go of her hand. 9:47 p.m. The gala was in full gold-lit swing. The champagne was excellent and the conversations were exhausting, and Amara's feet, in heels she had not broken in, were beginning to lodge a formal complaint. She slipped away toward the bathroom. The venue was enormous, 3 interconnected wings, and took a wrong turn somewhere past the East Ballroom. She was checking her phone for directions when she heard voices behind a partially open door. 2 men. Korean. Low and deliberate, the way people spoke when they wanted to be quiet but not silent. She wouldn't have stopped. Except she heard the name. Kwon Si-hyun. She stopped. She pressed herself to the wall beside the door and stood very still and listened with everything she had. Her Korean was good. Not perfect, but good enough. Good enough to catch the words that mattered. The clause was never real. Her breath stilled in her chest. There is no marriage clause in the Kwon family charter. There never was. The lawyers who supposedly missed it, they work for the uncle. The entire thing was constructed, fabricated from the ground up, designed to pressure Si-hyun into a rushed marriage that could be legally challenged afterward, destabilizing his position long enough for the board vote to shift. Si-hyun was never the target. The company was, he was just the door. And he didn't know. The door swung open. A man stepped out and stopped. Older, silver hair, a suit that cost more than her rent had ever been. The eyes of someone who had been playing a longer game than everyone else in the room for a very long time. Kwon Jae-won, the uncle. He looked at her with an expression so calm it was almost gentle. Mrs. Kwon, he said pleasantly. Enjoying the evening? The smile came automatically. Years of customer service, of making difficult people feel handled. Lovely party, she said. She walked back to the ballroom with her pulse steady and her mind running at a speed she hadn't known it could reach. Si-hyun was standing exactly where she'd left him, speaking to two men in dark suits, his posture controlled, his expression doing the thing it always did in public, revealing nothing, processing everything. He found her across the room before she found him. His eyes moved to her immediately, something in his expression releasing what looked like relief. She crossed the room, took his arm, leaned close enough that only he could hear. We need to talk, she said quietly. Tonight. Not here. He looked at her, read her face with a focused attention. What happened? He asked. Later. She squeezed his arm once and turned a bright smile toward the two men watching them. Dance with me first. He looked at her. I don't dance, he said. I know. She was already turning toward the floor. Come anyway. He didn't dance. Ji-young had told her. Park had told her. Everything about this man said. He did not do unnecessary physical expression in public. He was precise and deliberate and danced at events approximately never. He took her hand and walked her to the floor. And Amara, who had spent the last 7 hours being warm on purpose, felt something shift in her chest that had nothing to do with the contract and everything to do with the way his hand held hers. The car home was quiet in the way that felt full rather than empty. Seoul moved past the windows in long streaks of gold and neon. She watched the city. He watched her. She could feel it without turning her head. You were good tonight, he said, more like a compliment. Thanks. A pause that breathed. What did you need to tell me? She turned from the window, looked at him, the man who had stepped in front of her at a wedding without being asked and danced at a gala without being able to. Tomorrow, she said. I'll tell you tomorrow. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he accepted it, turned back to the window the way he accepted most things, cleanly without argument. Their hands rested on the seat between them till they got home. She lay awake in the gray penthouse bedroom until 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, thinking about a clause that was never real and a man who'd built his marriage around a lie someone else told. Thinking about the way he'd looked at her when the reporter asked if she loved him. Thinking about the fact that the whole reason she was here was constructed, that none of this was supposed to happen, and yet here she was in his home, in his life, holding information that could detonate everything. She could tell him tomorrow. She could not tell him at all. She could walk away. The money was already in her account. The contract had enough gray area. She could be on a flight to Lagos by Thursday and leave all of it behind. She stared at the ceiling. She thought about the way his hand had felt on hers on the dance floor. She wasn't going anywhere. She woke up and was in the kitchen by 6 a.m. and began cooking. She found everything she needed. His kitchen was immaculate and fully stocked in the way of a space that had been prepared by someone else for someone who barely used it. Good tomatoes. Scotch bonnet pepper she'd bought herself 3 days ago and quietly stored in his fridge like a small act of territorial claim. Long grain rice. Seasoning cubes. The kind of ingredients that had no business being in a Gangnam penthouse and were there entirely because of her. She cooked with the music low, lower than she usually played it, concession to a sleeping house, a man she didn't know well enough yet to know how lightly he slept. The smell filled the penthouse by 6:40. Rich and warm and entirely out of place in all this gray, tomato and pepper, and the specific warmth of a Nigerian kitchen transplanted into a Seoul morning. She plated it properly. Set the table the way her aunt had taught her, the way that said I made this for you without having to say anything at all. She stood back and looked at it. It's breakfast, she told herself. You cooked because you cook, it means nothing. She heard his door at 7:02. He came out already dressed. Full suit, 7 a.m., the armor on before the day had properly started. He moved toward the kitchen on autopilot, reaching for the coffee machine and then stopped. Looked at the table, looked at her. She leaned against the counter with her mug and kept her expression easy. Jollof rice. I know it's not a typical breakfast, but you barely touched dinner last night and… There's a chef for it, he said. She blinked. I know. I just wanted to. He comes at 7:30. There's no need for this. He said it cleanly as a fact. Then he picked up his phone from the counter, his keys, his jacket from the chair, and walked toward the front door. He didn't take the plate, he didn't look back. The door closed. Amara stood in the kitchen for a moment. She looked at the table. The 2 plates. The steam still rising from the rice she'd been making since 6 a.m. She picked up her fork and ate alone. She told herself it didn't sting. The elevator took 32 seconds to reach the lobby. Si-hyun stood in it and looked at the doors and thought briefly about the woman at home. He had a system and it was not going to stop working because a woman had put a plate on his table at 7 in the morning and looked at him like she expected nothing, and somehow that was worse than if she'd expected everything. He did not need breakfast or a set table. He stared at the elevator doors. The elevator opened. He walked to the car. Park was waiting, coffee in hand. Real coffee, from the place 3 blocks from the office that Si-hyun had gone to every morning for 4 years. Morning, sir. Park handed him the cup. Paused. Did you eat? Si-hyun got in the car. Park got in the front and did not ask again. The first message arrived at 7:44 a.m. It was from the board secretary. An emergency board meeting had been called for Friday. Agenda item: review of executive leadership structure in light of recent personal developments. All senior members requested in attendance. Si-hyun read it twice. Recent personal developments. His marriage. They were already moving. He forwarded it to his legal team without reply and looked out the window at Seoul morning traffic and thought about his uncle's face at the gala. That terrible calm, the expression of a man who had already placed all his pieces and was simply waiting for the board to play them. The second message arrived at 8:01 a.m. Not from the board. From Shin Yuri. He almost didn't open it. Then he did, because he was a man who preferred to know the shape of what was coming toward him, however unpleasant. Si-hyun, I know you think you've handled everything neatly. You haven't. What I know about the Kwon charter, and about your little arrangement, would be very interesting to the right board members. I gave you 3 years. You replaced me in 5 days with a stranger. Did you really think I just disappear? You have until Friday. Call me. He read it once. Set the phone face down on the seat. Looked out the window. Yuri knew something about the charter, which meant she was connected to someone who had constructed it. His uncle's reach was longer than he'd calculated, the network older, the plan running deeper than a single fabricated clause. This wasn't opportunism. This was architecture. Something built carefully over time by people who had been patient because they were certain. The question was how certain. The second question, the one that arrived quietly and uninvited, was how much Amara had heard in that corridor last night. We need to talk, she had said. Tonight. Not here. She hadn't told him yet. Why hadn't she told him yet? He picked up the phone and called Park. Cancel my 9 o'clock, he said. Sir. And find out everything we have on the board members calling Friday's meeting. I want it on my desk by noon. And order breakfast to the penthouse. Silence from the front seat. Sir, the chef arrives at. Not from the chef. From the jollof place in Mapo that does the morning service. She'll know the name. Park's voice was professionally neutral. Of course, sir. Si-hyun ended the call. Looked out the window. The city moved past in the particular blue of a Seoul morning that hadn't fully decided to be day yet. Somewhere behind him, in a gray penthouse that was starting to smell like someone actually lived in it, Amara Osei was eating breakfast alone at a table she'd set for 2. He looked at his phone. He put it in his pocket. He would fix it. He didn't examine why that mattered. Back at the penthouse, Amara had washed both plates, the used one and the untouched one, and was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with her sketchbook when her phone buzzed. Unknown delivery notification. Mapo District Restaurant. Scheduled arrival. 8:45 a.m. She stared at it. Opened the note attached. No name. No explanation. Just an address and an order. Jollof rice, fried plantain, 2 chin-chin on the side. She looked at the note for a long time. Then she looked at the burnt orange canvas on the wall. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize, Korean. The message was 3 lines and it stopped her smile completely. Miss Osei, you don't know me, but I know what you heard last night. I know what you're holding. And I know you haven't told him yet. There's a reason the clause was built. There's a reason you were chosen specifically. Not randomly. Not from a cafe by coincidence. Ask your husband how he knew your name before you told it to him. She read it 3 times. Then she sat very still in the middle of the gray living room, beneath the orange canvas, in the quiet of a penthouse that was starting to feel like hers, and understood that the ground she'd been standing on had just shifted in a direction she hadn't seen coming. He knew her name. Before she told it to him, she thought about the café, the corner table, her section. She picked up her sketchbook, opened it to a clean page, and wrote one question in the center of it, in the careful block letters she used when something mattered. Was any of this an accident?